Hello, friends. Chris Coursey here, president of Thrive Today, and I want to welcome you to the Relational Skills in Real Life podcast. Friends, I'm glad you're here. Today's topic is an exciting topic. It's about learning relational skills online versus in person. That's right. We often have people ask, hey, could I take the Thrive training online? Or I can't make it to Thrive. Can I do some online version of this? So we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind learning habits, learning in person versus an online format, especially when it comes to practicing relational skills. And the million-dollar question is there hope for those who can only do online right now? Well, friends, let's talk a little bit about learned habits that are reflexes and not conscious decisions or willpower. New research from psychology and health found that two-thirds of our daily behaviors are initiated on autopilot. This means they're initiated out of habit rather than conscious decision making. And participants and people in this research acted automatically in familiar settings, and this reflects learned associations. So they were just able to kind of go through the motions of things without having to think about it or to pause and say, should I choose to do this? And about half of these habits that the people did in this study were also aligned with their personal goals. So these were habits based on values that they had, goals that they had, which suggests that people create routines that support their intentions. And these findings really give us some clarity on the power of habits and how habits shape our behavior. And they also lead to strategies for building healthier lifestyles and stronger relationships by focusing on habit formation and even breaking old unwanted habits that we might not want in any way, shape, or form. So the research also found that 46% of behaviors were both triggered by habit and aligned with conscious intentions, suggesting that people form habits that really line up with what's important to them. And the professor, one of the professors in this study, Professor Benjamin Gardner, really had something to say about this study. He said, our research shows that while people may consciously want to do something, the actual initiation and performance of that behavior is often done without thinking, driven by non-conscious habits. And this suggests that good habits may be a powerful way to really help us make our goals a reality so that we live in a way that really matches who God created us to be. And so, for people who want to break their bad habits, he says, simply telling them to try harder isn't enough. To create lasting changes, we must incorporate strategies to help people recognize and disrupt their unwanted habits and ideally form positive new ones in their place. So, friends, this is why we train relational skills with our face to face, in person training. This provides opportunities for interaction that includes repetition, focused practice, even review as we interact with people and practice these personal and interactive exercises with our partner or within a group. And these practices are designed to develop ingrained habits that we'll use without thinking about it. They become part of our character so that our brain uses these habits without us having to stop and think about what we want to do. And so there's some important brain science behind the in-person learning versus an online format. You see, the crux of the in-person training really comes down to right brain processing that happens at 6 cycles a second. So my right hemisphere and your right hemisphere are interacting at 6 cycles per second. And these two hemispheres are mirroring each other so that the trained brain is actually downloading their skills to the other person. And the younger brain is duplicating the greater brain. And this only happens when we're face to face looking at each other. This is what we call creating a mutual mind state, where we're locked in our brain, our right hemispheres are interacting with each other, moving quickly faster than we can consciously track. And so part of the challenges that we have with the online formats is the technology doesn't exist where we can have the speed that's needed and the accuracy that's needed for the transmission of relational skills to occur. This mutual mind state only occurs with face-to-face interaction when you're sitting or standing across from someone. And it's during these mutual mind states that 6 cycles of communication are happening every second, and even our brain chemistry is being synchronized. So what's happening in my brain chemistry is it's affecting your brain chemistry. And as I said, the structure in our brain is even matched. So as this right hemisphere to right hemisphere interactions occurring, your brain, the younger brain's actually trying to duplicate itself based on this greater mind. And emotions are amplified with glances. So a little bit of joy quickly becomes a lot of joy when you're in a mutual mind state. And I think about a friend of mine who had worked with me for years in a video Zoom calls, basically. And he struggled with depression, low joy. He had a hard time quieting and even returning to joy from strong emotions. So as I met with my friend online, there was a lot that we could do. We could talk about relational skills. I could teach him about skills. We could interact. We could even do a manual prayer together so that he could connect with Jesus and get healing and really find hope and more peace in his life. So this was a big deal. This deeply impacted him. Eventually, he attended one of our in-person Thrive trainings, and this experience that week of practicing relational skills took his growth to an entirely new level. The in-person practice provided a lot of opportunities for my friend to see others practice relational skills, to observe new examples that his brain hadn't seen before, to be able to interact with people who had a little more skill practice than he had. And he ended up getting a lot of practice. So this interactive practice deeply impacted him because he was learning to calm strong emotions, which he just didn't have anything on file to help him with that, and learning how to recover from some of those strong emotions and get back to joy. He learned to validate and comfort when big emotions arose and other people would have emotions. Instead of trying to fix them or even become angry or minimize what they're feeling, he actually learned to stay a non-anxious presence by his practice. And my friend's spouse was shocked at the differences when he returned home from the week. And eventually they both went on to do the training and finish all three tracks together. So what my friend needed was some in-person interaction to grow capacity to practice relational skills that wouldn't have really been possible over a Zoom call. So there was a lot we could do over Zoom, but he actually needed the examples. He needed the right hemisphere to right hemisphere interaction, and this provided opportunities for him to grow. So this is why we interact at Thrive and we do exercises to really develop our skills and acquire our skills. So skills, relational skills and brain skills are best developed in person. And there's skills like what we call skill 9 and 15 that rely on nonverbal cues. And you cannot really do those skills over a video call or over the phone. You have to have moment by moment updating and observing and interacting in order to learn these skills of knowing when to stop and knowing how to stay connected at high energy levels without going over the top. So these skills were missing in my friend. And because they were missing in him, it was affecting his marriage. It was affecting his relationships with his children. So he needed some in-person training to really strengthen his skills. Now, many people ask, well, what if I can't come to Thrive? What can I do? Well, friends, this is where the online training and online interaction really does provide a lot of benefits. So we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There's a lot that can happen on Zoom calls, video calls, and phone calls. We can interact with people who are with us. We can share stories. We can connect. We can talk. We can process what's going on in us. We can interact with Jesus. What we're really doing is training our left hemisphere to be the observer of what's happening in our bodies and in our minds. And this is a learned ability because the observer in our brain is designed to notice what's happening in the environment. This is important for survival, not so much notice what's happening within us. So there's a lot that can happen, and I encourage people to find those opportunities to connect online if you can't make it to the in-person training. What also helps is to find some friends that you can practice relational skills. Find people who have skills that you're missing. And there are options here. We actually have created books. There's book studies that contain practice exercises so that you can practice those exercises with other people. And this is going to be training your brain. And it's helpful. It's going to grow capacity. It's going to grow good things in your life. Now at Thrive, we're very serious about learning the 19 skills. So there's a specific training format. Every minute is planned and all of the tracks it's designed to really help you develop these ingrained skills that will become those habits that you will use without having to think about it. So if you want to visit thrivetoday.org, you can watch the Thrive lectures with Dr. Jim Wilder. He talks a lot about this right hemisphere to right hemisphere interaction that I talked about today. And Wilder really breaks it down. What is happening in the brain and why do we need the face-to-face interaction? You can join us at one of our Thrive trainings. This is going to be the most intensive opportunity you have as far as we're concerned, to practice these relational skills. So the ideal is that people come to Thrive, they get the training, then they go back home and they start practicing skills with their families and with their communities, because ultimately we do need a community. And you can start with the Joy Switch book, which really has some great exercises, as well as the Habit Builder courses. If you want to be able to practice exercises at home or even online with other people, you're still going to benefit, friends. So there's a place for both the online and the in-person. In an ideal world, we would have both. So friends, I hope and pray this is the start of something good for you today.